The best part of the football season? Checking out the post-game stats. Which wideouts scored more than 2 touchdowns? Which quarterbacks threw for less than 350 yards? Think you can pick who will do what before kickoff? Then play Pick 6 from DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, select between 2 and 6 players, and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. It's that simple. And for all our first-time Pick 6 players, check this out. New customers, play $5 on your first pick set, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code BALLERS. That's code BALLERS for new customers to play $5 on your first pick set and get $50 in Pick 6 credits only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Introducing the new Versed Limitless Pant Collection. Reimagined to deliver effortless style, mobility, and comfort, the new Limitless Collection features moisture-wicking, 4-way stretch fabric that's wrinkle-resistant and doesn't lose fit. Plus, the updated design offers a functional and classic look with unmatched versatility. The new Versed Limitless Pant Collection. Pants made for movement. Available only at Dick's Sporting Goods. Shop now at dicks.com/limitless.
The DFS Studio is brought to you by DraftKings. Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in. It's Friday, November 1st, here on the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kate Otten, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew. I'm glad you're here, Betz.
Oh, Kyle. I mean, Cade. You are a special human. I'll tell you that. Oh, man. I really wish this was a video, production. But corporate, they just don't care about us, Kyle. So people don't get to see your beautiful costume. I mean, the face paint is on point. Let me see the fingies. Are they taped up? Oh my goodness. You got the fingers taped, the wrists are taped. You look like you're ready to come to work, play 98% of the snaps.
Yes.
But now actually see targets. So, it's a really a bummer that he's not on the main slate. So you'll have to play some Showdown that you can get your access to Kate Otten this week against the Chiefs. It's a great matchup, by the way, against the Chiefs for Showdown. But yeah, you're decked out, man. Happy Halloween to Kate Otten. It's good to see.
Yeah, Fantasy Footballers pretty big on Halloween episodes. If you haven't gone to watch Footballers' main one, it is a treat. 10 years straight of doing Halloween episodes. Andy, once again, has outdone himself. Great costume, by the way. But yeah, Kate Otten is one of those players that is very near and dear to my heart. If you've been listening to this podcast, you understand. But I think it goes deeper. It's because I think like he embodies the spirit of what I want to be, of just showing up every day. We talk about it all the time. He's got his lunch pail. He sleeps with a lunch pail. I looked this stat up. Okay. Fresh hot stat. 1,500 and exactly, hold on. 1,500 and snaps since the beginning of the 2023 season. That's the most of any offensive player. And I'm pretty sure that's the number of podcasts I've done with the Footballers since I've started. So, Kate Otten, I'm glad that he's getting the glory he deserves.
Now, did you bring your lunch pail with you today?
Gosh,
that's
man,
part of your costume.
I don't even know where you'd go to get an old school lunch pail. A lunch box doesn't do it. I need a pail.
No. Yeah, you need a pail. Like you don't want like one of the igloo cooler ones or anything like that. It's got to be an actual pail. So yeah, you dropped the ball there, but I'll let it slide.
All right, and also just curious, how many Kate Otten jerseys do you think have been sold in the history of humankind?
Oh man, well I don't know how big his family is. I'm sure he has a lovely wife and maybe a kid or two. So
wife
if you
and
add
kid.
those in,
Yep.
Okay, so there's 2 right there. I'm sure his parents. There's 2 right there. I don't know how many relatives he has beyond that, as far as siblings and all that sort of thing. And then you throw on you there. So I would put the over-under probably at about 9.5 per season on Cade Otton jerseys, which, honestly, like there's some players when you go to the website, the team website, and you got to scroll and you got to keep scrolling. And then sometimes they're not even on there. Is he even on the Bucs official website to buy a jersey?
Now he is.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Whew, I was going to be very upset with Tampa on that one.
So what's the most obscure jersey that you own?
I have a Vince Carter throwback Raptors jersey.
That's cool.
Which is cool. I'm not a huge NBA fan, and if I follow anybody, it's always Philly sports. But I got it at a yard sale about 6-7 years ago. The guy was just getting rid of it for like $5. I was like, sure, why not? So that's probably the most obscure one because it's not a fan thing for me at all. It's just cool, and I like Vince Carter. So that's probably it. What about you? Besides Cade Otton.
I mentioned before I have a David Carr Texans jersey. I have a Byron Leftwich Jaguars jersey, which is just great. A legit jersey. I do have LeBron James high school jersey that I got when he was in high school. So that was cool. But I would say the most random one I have is another one that I found at like a thrift store. An Antonio McDyess, like Nuggets baby onesie that my child wore for like one time.
That is definitely the most obscure thing I think anybody has.
Yeah, I'm glad they made them though. But anyway, we are glad that you're here with us. We're going to be talking everything week 9 for you. Talk about our cash picks, GPP. Got some great slate breakers, and then Borg versus Betz gives you some good pick 6 picks. It's the day after Halloween, and now for footballers, I went for Cade Otton, and then for actually like Halloween, I went as one of the Mighty Ducks, of course. So I got my my Ducks helmet on, my Ducks. It's like a full onesie gear, so it looks like I'm a hockey player. And so I was pretty pleased about it. But I did have a conversation with my wife, and I was like, you know what? I don't know if you know this. I love the Mighty Ducks. She's like, yeah, I get it. I was like, what if I had like a Mighty Ducks party one day? Like just everyone dressed up a different character. And she goes, I don't even like it that much. I don't even like this movie.
Wow. Dude, I mean, there's usually like one or two things that pop up when you're dating, before you actually commit to marriage that maybe it's a yellow flag or red flag, but I feel like that would have come up in the past at some point. And if you would have known that, I imagine you would have made different life choices.
I've thought about it. And also the piece of information I need to tell you, it was almost the last thing we said lying in bed last night. It was like the last conversation. I roll over, and just cry myself to sleep.
You're just laying there staring at the ceiling like, what have I done?
Just some bad
But
choices.
I love this woman.
Yeah. So anyway, hopefully Halloween was kind to you, kind to your kids. You had a fun time. I did have one other piece of information, Betz, because we're a stupid podcast. We've done a lot together. But I did see a headline this morning that Chili's, quote, is on fire as other restaurant chains go cold. It just made my heart just so happy.
What a headline. Yeah, I mean, Chili's, they never left, but they could not be more back. I mean, let's be honest. So, yeah, you can miss me with all these Texas Roadhouse and, whatever other chain restaurant you got. It's Chili's and nobody else. They're at the top. I did read the article, I will say, that was out. I think it was in CNN News. Somebody posted it in our Discord, which was great, in the DFS channel, talking about how they're appealing to younger clientele and how they have these apps and people love to eat them a certain way, and then it appeals to the youths, Kyle. And then at the very bottom, which got me so good, they're talking about how they're doing these special margaritas for October and all these sort of things. And they said they have a new $10 Don Julio based margarita for their higher end clientele, is the quote. So they're doing it, man. They're doing all of it. And remember, if anybody's listening from corporate, the DMs are open.
The higher end clientele that spends $10 on a margarita is just great stuff.
I laughed out loud as soon as I read that. I was drinking my coffee this morning. It was gold.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed us just getting to clown around. Let's jump into our cash picks.
Straight cash, homie.
I mean, business 101, right? All we've talked about so far is Halloween and Chili's, and not even mention anything with the DFS Pass, but dfspass.com. We hope that our picks, we hope that our analysis will speak for itself. We're halfway through the season. We think that you can do really well, including...
But we're not. Because we go through the Super Bowl. So we're not even halfway.
I'm an idiot. Bad at my job.
Kyle, come on. Sorry, continue.
As Cade, I'm not used to having this role. I could be on the field, but I don't know how Cade Otten would do hosting a podcast.
I've actually never heard him talk before.
He can't. He has nothing to say. Just available. Coach, I'm available, but I won't talk up in meetings. All right. Our cash picks at quarterback. You can go a couple different directions. Like, I feel like this week, you could convince me to pay up for Jalen Hurts. You can go in the middle range of Dak Prescott at 6.2 or Geno Smith. And then there's some dirty names that we need to bring up. I don't know if you're ready. I don't know if the people are ready. You can play Daniel Jones at 5.2 at home. You can also play Gardner Minshew at 4.5 if you dare. So do you have the stones to play either of those dudes?
You know, I was looking at some teams, and if you are willing to punt it off this week, you can make some very fun teams. And there's a lot of really good high ceiling plays. We're going to talk about it, you know, like Kyron and Kamara, CeeDee Lamb is in an unbelievable spot. The list goes on and on. So part of the appeal of playing one of these guys, whether it's Daniel Jones or Gardner Minshew, is that you can get up to those studs. At the same time, if anybody wanted to spend up for Jalen Hurts at home against the Jaguars, I would have no issues with that. He's going to account for so many of their touchdowns, right? Whether it's via the pass or the run with the tush push at the 1 yard line. We think there's going to be a ton of back and forth potential between Kirk Cousins and Dak. That's interesting. But when I'm looking at teams and I'm looking at kind of what you can do with Gardner Minshew, which we didn't talk about this on Tuesday because we didn't even scroll down far enough to see Gardner Minshew as a salary standout. When I logged in this morning and I was looking at everything, I was like, wait, Gardner Minshew is $4,500 on DraftKings? He's cheaper than basically all of the backups in the league. I don't know what was happening here because Aiden O'Connell's not playing. Like, there's no question it's Gardner Minshew. He's $4,500 taking on the Bengals. And when you're looking at him, it's like, okay, yeah, but does he really have the ability to get there for us? You know, what do you need? At this price, we need 14, 15, somewhere up to 18 points would be great. And he's pretty much hit that every time he's been a starter. So as of this recording, I'm leaning towards Gardner Minshew in cash, which is kind of terrifying to say.
Wow.
But he's got Brock Bowers, who's an absolute stud. He's got Jacoby Myers, who's playing very, very well. And it's the Bengals, man. So, yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think it is very, very much in play on the slate.
Okay, so when you initially shared that with me this morning, I was like, dude, how much coffee have you had? Because that is a wild thing. But 4,500 is crazy in 2024 DFS. Like, we don't usually get that in DraftKings. Cincinnati, 28th in scheduled adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. And they've kind of shown they can't run the ball. They just can't do it, like, at all this year. So I don't mind it at 4,500. So would you be happy with 13 points?
I think that's probably the median expectation. Like, 12, 13, 14. But I think he can get up to 18, 19, 20. I mean, Gardner has played a handful of starts this year for this team. And in those contests, he has, this is half PPR scoring, not DraftKings, 10.8, 12.9, 14, 5 against Cleveland, 7.7, then he was benched, 15. So there's a little bit of a wide range, but it's the Bengals, and I think you can get there. So where are you at with that?
Because I'm a wild man.
It's Halloween. I've had a lot of candy. I'm clearly into it. I think it's viable. But it's salary expectation is really what it's about. And man, we're going to talk about CeeDee Lamb. I want to play him. So I think Gardner is interesting. So are you feeling the same or are you terrified?
I'm definitely going to play around with lineups. And I think that's what I would encourage people. That's how I got into trouble last week is I kind of locked on Jordan Love and I didn't really play around with different combinations with Bo Nix last week. So the same way you can look at Jalen Hurts and then say, if I want to save $3,300, which is crazy, to get up to CeeDee Lamb or to get up to Puka, or I want to play Alvin Kamara or some of the expensive guys, do it. I think Dak I'm going to get volume, but I'm probably going to lean into him for tournaments more and just play Dak CeeDee Lamb stacks. Geno only makes sense if DK Metcalf plays and is alive. And then I just wanted to bring up Daniel Jones because he was the quarterback 7 last time they played Washington. He's interesting too, just because he runs a little bit. So I think this week it kind of begs the question, how many studs can you fit in your lineup if you pay down? And I think you can get 3. Like, I think you can get 3 studs between running back and wide receiver that is worth it. We're probably punting off at tight end as well. So I think I'm more open to it than I thought I would be. And yeah, I did the same thing. I didn't scroll all the way down.
I mean, he's cheaper than Clayton Tune, Kenny Pickett, Jake Browning, Jake Hayner. I don't get it. I'm not saying he should be 6K, but like he should be at least 5,500 or something like that. So it's just a wild mispricing in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that the algorithm still thinks that Kenny Pickett is like a quarterback in the NFL, that he still plays. What's funny is we were messing around with some ChatGPT stuff, and I asked ChatGPT, who is the starting quarterback for the Steelers? ChatGPT said Kenny Pickett. So I was like, this is good stuff. So make sure you check out our best plays, because I think there's a lot of different ways you can go at quarterback this week, and that will actually change how the rest of your lineup is constructed. There are running back plays that we really like this week, and they're, I think, priced appropriately. I don't know if like you feel differently, but like Kamara at 7.8 is going to project awesome against Carolina on the road. The Saints have a crazy high team implied total, and I found this out. The Saints are more than a touchdown favorite, and it's the first time in league history that a road team is more than a touchdown favorite after having 2 or fewer wins at this point in the season. So Vegas really likes the Saints, and we think Kamara's a good play. Kyren, we're going to talk about that game. It's just, he's a touchdown machine at this point. So at 8K, you could totally play him. Do you have a lean between those two guys?
So it's interesting. I think my lean is Kamara if I only had to pick one, just because of the added pass catching work. Kyren, he's getting, a couple catches here and there, but he doesn't have the 4, 5, 6 target upside that Alvin Kamara has with Derek Carr back in the lineup. So I think that's my lean, but the systemic offense just in general should be so much more efficient with Puka and Kupp back in the lineup, and of course Kyren in a potential shootout with Seattle. So I think you could argue in favor of Kyren and say, look, this game environment is most likely to pop off, whereas with the Panthers, they're almost certainly not going to fight back, right? That's kind of the downside. But last week we saw Bo Nix and the offense go crazy in that game as well. I know Javonte failed, but largely betting on opponents facing Carolina will work out for you. So I think I lean Kamara, but to me, it's honestly a bit of a coin flip.
In the 6K range, there's a bunch of dudes. We talked about Devon Achane last week, and with Tua, he is a different running back that we kind of have to deal with. And at 6.7, I think that's too cheap. He is on the road. It's against Buffalo. We'll highlight that game because, man, Miami's been terrible against the Bills since Josh Allen's been there. But his floor is super high. His reception total has been awesome as well. So Achane at 6.7. Chuba on the other side of the coin of that game looks solid at 6.5. It is Bryce Young. Does that change your opinion of playing Chuba now?
It definitely is not ideal. Yeah, we talked about him on Tuesday, and it was like, oh yeah, like we don't think Jonathan Brooks is going to play. Maybe it's Andy Dalton. And now we've got news it is Bryce Young, and Jonathan Brooks did practice in full. We're still waiting on later in the week, but did practice in full on Wednesday. So not saying that Jonathan Brooks would take away a huge amount of work in his first career game off the injury, but if he's active, it doesn't give you as much confidence that Chuba's getting everything. The other concerning thing for me on Chuba is that Miles Sanders was getting run in garbage time last week when the game was just out of hand, and it's a 7-point spread, and if it gets out of hand again in the fourth quarter, you might see some Miles Sanders in there. So I'm less excited about Chuba than I was earlier in the week, just given what's changed around him. But it's a good matchup, and he's a guy that I think if he does end up becoming less of a cash play and kind of falls through the cracks, if no one's going to play him in tournaments, then that would be pretty interesting. So for me, I think I'm off of Chuba in cash.
All right, 2 more names I want to throw out there. I didn't think I'd be throwing them out there, but DeAndre Swift has been a top 10 running back in 4 straight games. He's 6.4 on the road against Arizona, who's been a defense you can run against. And then Chase Brown, if you wanted to play a Bengal, he's 5,900. He's averaged 16 opportunities per game over the last 5 weeks. And the Raiders are a team that you can certainly run on. So both of those guys at their price points project really well. I don't know if I'm going to get there, but the Bengals we're not going to talk about that game, but their team implied total is almost at 27 right now. And it would just be weird for me to not play any Bengal, especially if T. Higgins is out. Like, I want some access to this team, and they're favored by a touchdown at home. So any interest in Chase Brown?
Yeah, I like him this week. I was digging into some of the numbers because just based off feel, like, last week I watched the game completely because they were playing the Eagles, but sometimes I'm not always catching all the Bengals stuff. But I was looking at the numbers and I was like, oh, like, I knew Zach Moss was starting to get phased out, but it's like, oh, he's phased out. Like, he hasn't seen double-digit opportunities in 3 straight games. Meanwhile, Chase Brown is seeing, I wouldn't say like true workhorse role yet, but he's getting there. And like each week he's seeing more and more opportunities. So yeah, it's Chase Brown's backfield. He's been far more explosive. You can run on the Raiders. They've also faced the 8th highest running back target share this year. So you get a little bit of a pass catching floor and upside with Chase Brown. Like you said, home favorite, usually a good recipe for success for running back. And Vegas 29th in schedule adjusted points allowed to the RB. So I like Chase Brown if you want to go there. Now, it's sort of we always talk about it kind of like tiers of pricing. Like if you play Gardner, you probably don't need Chase Brown. But if you want to play Jalen Hurts or you want to play Dak or something that's more expensive, then you might need to dip down into this range. So just keep him in your player pool, see what works best for you in projections, and go from there.
Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back with wide receivers.
This episode is brought to you by Coke Zero Sugar. Being a fan takes a lot, whether it's loving your team through the lows and the highs, or stocking up for tailgates and getting pumped up for the big game. Maybe it's a celebration with old friends, and new ones too. But whatever it is, it's thirsty work. So drink something worth celebrating. Coke Zero Sugar. Incredible taste, zero sugar. Best Coke ever.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
I mean, for a Halloween episode, I ranted. It's been a day. So I apologize for nothing. Let's keep going on. Wide receivers. I like 10 guys this week at wide receiver. And that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a 3 running back build in cash, but I want to play CD Lamb at 8.8. We'll talk about that game. Malik Neighbors at 7.5, Puka Nacua at 7.2, Drake London at 6.7. Those are all guys in the elite tier that I would love to pay for, but I'm pretty sure my favorite play, price sensitive, is also yours, and it's Chris Olave at 6.1.
I love Chris Olave this week. And, we're biased, obviously, if you've listened to us at any point over the last 3 years. But it's all there, right? I mean, you have no Rashid Shaheed. You get Derek Carr back in the lineup. You get the Panthers. 6.1 on DraftKings. Like, this is the range that is the sweet spot for floor ceiling combination, in my opinion, whether it's for cash or tournaments. I love this range for wide receivers on DraftKings, and Chris Olave gets the matchup this week against Carolina. We always think of them as just this horrific run defense. They've quietly been worse against the pass, relatively speaking, over the last couple of games. Over the last month of the season, they're 31st in EPA per dropback, 29th in EPA per rush attempts, Kyle. So they're a pass funnel is what I'm saying. But no, in all seriousness, wide receiver ones have destroyed the Panthers. Chris Olave should be in a great spot.
Yeah, they run a ton of cover 3. Like, they run the highest in the league. And so that is a coverage that you can actually zone in on, and that Chris Olave has crushed throughout his career with that. So I think the bigger question is, are you going to play Kamara or Olave, or can you play them together, or how are you doing it?
I'm not personally ruling out anything or trying to do anything specific. If I have the money and they both fit, I mean, the Panthers are that bad that, assuming Derek Carr is in, this is like only if Carr is in situation. But if Carr is in and there's, a ceiling here of 30 plus points, which teams do against the Panthers every time, then I am definitely okay playing them both.
Okay. A little bit lower, Ladd McConkey at 5.6 is a solid play. Jacoby Myers, interested in stacking him up. That little Gardner Minshew, Jacoby Myers value stack of the week. It's not bad. Not bad. That's
Stock on Brack Bowers, and now it's a party.
Yeah, I'm looking at how much that is. It's under 10K for a stack.
For just those two?
For those two.
I mean, I played a Mason Rudolph Calvin Ridley stack last week, Kyle. I'll do it again. I'll do it again with these two.
You did. You sent me a lineup. I was like, dude, you're a dirty, dirty man. Because I played Ridley, but I was like, Mason Rudolph, no way. And then the very beginning of that game, I was like, dude, you are cooking with some Mason Rudolph.
It was a good lineup. It kind of fizzled out at the end, but it was a good sweat.
Yeah, there's some 3K guys. I think Parker Washington is still very playable. Is that if Brian Thomas Jr. misses?
I think it had to be. I mean, Gabe Davis, I think, is pretty likely to play, but he's also dealing with injury. For me, it'd be like if one of those two are out, then Parker Washington is a lot stronger. With those guys in, I don't feel as excited about it. So that's kind of where I'm at. Where do you lean with that injury situation?
Yeah, I mean, if Brian Thomas is out, then I'm fine playing Parker Washington. I think I just like Evan Ingram better as a play at 5.3, and we'll talk about that game a little bit later. But man, Philadelphia against slot wide receivers, that's essentially what Ingram is. I really like that matchup a lot. I think the way that builds are going to work this week is if you do spend down at quarterback, like you play Daniel Jones or Minshew, you don't have to absolutely punt things off, especially if you punt at tight end. Like you don't have to have that wide receiver that's in the 3K range. So Parker Washington, Cedric Tillman, I'm probably not going to play him this week. He's 4.3, but he's definitely a player at his price that isn't priced up enough considering he's seen 21 targets the last 2 weeks. So he's fine. Ray McLeod is 3.8. His price has slowly come down. So if you want access to the Atlanta passing game, you don't want to play Mooney or London, I don't mind just going down to 3.8 if he's kind of more your punt play. But at the end of the day, like I'm playing 1 to 2 guys in the expensive range, and then you maybe even can fit in, a 5K or Olave.
Yeah, the top looks really, really strong this week. And there's some weeks where that's not the case. And there's some weeks where it's like, man, these guys all look incredible. Like we talked about, Olave in the mid-range, but if you go up to Drake London, great game environment, his price came down. We like that. Puka only played just over 50% of the snaps, didn't run all the routes, but still was just the first read when he was out there. Saw 9 targets in a limited role. You can throw on Seattle. Awesome matchup. CeeDee Lamb at the top, incredible play this week. If T. Higgins is out again, Jamar Chase is in play this week. So there's a lot of really strong plays here at the top range at wide receiver, which is kind of why I'm leaning towards a Minshew or Daniel Jones type in cash, which saying that out loud is just terrifying. But there's just so many good wide receiver plays that's how I'm thinking about this slate.
At tight end, you can play Brock Bowers or Trey McBride in the expensive tier. I feel so bad for McBride because he's just been consistent. He's a tight end 4 on the season. Doesn't have a receiving touchdown yet. It's the most receptions and receiving yards ever for a tight end at this point in the season without a touchdown. He's going to break through soon. But if you really wanted to punt off this week, I think Mike Gesicki is probably going to be in if T. Higgins is out. And we know that T. Higgins didn't practice on Thursday. So Mike Gesicki at 3.1 has had opportunities when Higgins has been out.
Correct. Yes, he has seen target counts of 4, 9, and 8 for a 20.7 target share without T. Higgins. So think about that as just a pass catcher or a big slot wide receiver, which is basically what he's been without T. Higgins. Obviously, it's not a scary matchup against the Raiders. So, yeah, I think if Higgins is out, Mike Gesicki is the punt play of the week.
Yeah, and at that price point, like if he gets 2 catches, you don't care. It's not a big deal. You don't have to do too much at that price point. So Ingram, I don't mind paying up for that either at 5.3 on the road. At defense, I feel really proud of myself for influencing you to consider the Giants in your cash game picks article. They're 2.3. They're at home. It's against Washington. So whatever, numbers or metrics you kind of look at, you're like, oh, this is a bad matchup. They already played each other in Washington in week 2, and Washington didn't score a touchdown and yet somehow won the game. I just think that at their price point at home, I like them a lot. Andy actually took them as his upset of the week, the Giants +4.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Divisional game, second time playing them. It kind of makes sense. To me, is like you said, it's just more of a price thing was what I came down to. When I looked, I was like, man, they're the same price as the Jaguars. They are cheaper than the Panthers. And, I mean, if there's one strength on this defense, it's the defensive line and the ability to rush the passer. They are Seventh in, I'm sorry, where are my numbers here? Seventh in ESPN's pass rush win rate. They're 11th in pressure rate. They're 6th in PFF pass rush grade. So they're a top 10 pass rush unit, basically, is the consensus here. And you're getting that at 2,300 against a divisional rival you've already played. Yeah, I think it's totally fine. I mean, if you have the money, I prefer the Eagles, or I prefer, like the Titans against that terrible offensive line of New England. But if you need the money, I think the Giants are totally fine.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think there's enough savings between quarterback, if you punt off tight end, and defense, that you're going to be able to fit in studs this week in cash. So make sure you look at all those best plays that are in the DFS pass. Moving on.
Stack Attack.
Betz and I are going to talk about a couple of games that we think you can stack this week in tournaments. I write a pace of play article every single week. Betz does the Vegas report that's in the DFS pass, where I get to go all the way through and talk through these games. So let's first talk about Dallas at Atlanta. Atlanta is now a 3-point home favorite, a strong 3-point home favorite in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The over-under has gone down a little bit. It's now at 51.5, but still pretty healthy. And in my game pace score, I gave this a 4.25 out of 5, which is the highest on the week. And the reason why we like this game is Atlanta is first in neutral pace, Dallas is fifth. 5 of Dallas's 7 games have hit the over. And the biggest story, I think, is Dallas's defense that was a turnover machine last year, right? Like, Deron Bland setting the pick 6 record. They've taken a huge step back this year. 30th in yards per play, 31st in rushing yards per game allowed, and 30th in yards per attempt. So you pick whatever you want. The running game, the passing game, Dallas has been bad. So where do you want to start talking about this game? Because there's a lot to like.
Yeah, let's start on the Falcons side of the ball, because I definitely want to pick on this Cowboys defense, especially on the road. We're not going to have Micah Parsons in this game, so Kirk Cousins from a clean pocket has just been great. And, with DeMarcus Lawrence still out, without Micah Parsons, I think the Falcons are going to have a lot of offensive success here. And when I look at this game and you look at Kirk Cousins, quarterback roster percentage doesn't really matter a ton in tournaments because it's generally pretty flat. But I don't think a lot of people are going to play Kirk Cousins. London will be popular because he's in the quote unquote cash conversation. But Darnell Mooney, I think is going to be a guy that falls through the cracks a little bit. Kyle Pitts has been good. Kyle Pitts has been good, and nobody's going to play him either. So there are contrarian options as part of Kirk Cousins stacks, which I am very into. I think if I'm going to play a Kirk stack, I want London, so I'll eat the chalk there just because most of the time when Kirk's hitting his ceiling, it's because London has a good game. But a secondary stacking partner is very much in play thanks to the contrarian nature of the roster percentage.
Yeah, you can absorb Drake London's roster percentage with Cousins and then finding a Mooney or a Pitts to throw in there. Drake London has just been awesome. Targeted on 42% of his routes in the red zone. Number 1 in the NFL. So I don't mind it. We did get information that Micah Parsons is going to miss his 4th straight game. And if you look at Kirk Cousins splits, my boy Kirk O'Chains, he leads all quarterbacks in the NFL in passing yards within the pocket, 10-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio with a clean pocket, and it changes the equation if they cannot get pressure on Kirk Cousins. So I think Kirk Cousins at home is a good play. I won't call him elite because he does nothing on the ground, and so you're really asking him to hit the 300-yard bonus and this game to really go off. I think Dak's the quarterback I like more, and I'm looking at roster percentages right now where it's the only guys that are going to carry anything is Lamb and some Jake Ferguson, but I feel like Jake Ferguson's another player that, is not going to be steamed up a ton. So I really like Dak double stacks there. And then just picking a Falcon, is it Bijan or London on the other side and bringing it back?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. If you're playing Dak, obviously you want him with CD. He's just accounting for everything in the offense right now. And, the running back situation for Dallas somehow seems to be getting worse as the year goes on, Kyle. I'm shocked. They went into the year with Rico and Zeke, and they were like, you know what, let's get Dalvin in here. Let's really make this thing disgusting and worse. So I don't think there's a running back you can play from Dallas, not that you want to. And to me, when I look at Dallas, it's now or never. If they lose this game, does McCarthy make it to week 10? I mean, this is a must-win game for Dallas. And so the way that they do that is CeeDee Lamb. That's the only hope. So if I'm playing this game, it has to have CeeDee Lamb, in my opinion, as part of the Dak stack, because I just think he's going to get absolutely peppered this week. So I love CeeDee, whether it's cash or tournaments. I plan to be overweight and really go there. So that's my take on the situation. I don't have a ton of interest on the other ancillary pieces in Dallas. Like I said, I just think CeeDee's going to see so much of it. So for me, it's more of a Kirk stack situation with with CeeDee on the other side is how I'm playing it.
Are you okay with Turd Ferguson?
He's fine. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of like every other tight end in this range. You can make a case for him, but you can definitely see a situation where it's like 4 for 50. Like he needs a touchdown to get there, especially at this price, 5,100. There's a lot of high ceiling plays around him at tight end that I prefer. Like I'd prefer Njoku. I would love to get up to Brock Bowers, just to name a few. I think Evan Ingram has a really high ceiling without Christian Kirk. So I think he's okay, but I'm not in love with it.
Yeah, I think his red zone usage was so strong last year that I'm banking on that on a team where it's like Tolbert's fine, but he's miscast as a wide receiver 2 on this team. He's a 3-4. So Dak, it's all about leaning into the passing volume. 39 pass attempts per game. Falcons are allowing the highest completion rate in the NFL. So I think at the end of the day, it's pretty clean on the Dallas side. Like I'm not really trying to dance around. What do you do with Bijan in this game? Like, are you playing him as a bring back? Are you saying, hey, if this game doesn't hit the over, then I think Bijan's going to be an elite play? I mean, he's seen 34% of the team's total rush attempts and targets over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, and you not just this year, but you can go back to last year and look at running backs and rushing on Dallas. You can do it. So Bijan, I think, is a really, really strong play. I'm not sure where he'll fall come Sunday morning as far as roster percentage, so make sure you're looking at that. But I could see a situation where you look at, kind of how the pricing shakes out this week, just talking on DraftKings specifically. Like at running back, we talked about Alvin Kamara is really interesting. Kyron Williams looks great. I mean, people are going to play maybe James Conner, Devon Achane. The more names you list, like eventually somebody has to come down in roster percentage. And it feels to me like Bijan could be one of those guys that gets squeezed a little bit here. So monitor that in the roster percentage report. If he comes down to the, 12-ish range, like that looks like an awesome play. I don't think he's getting steamed up this week. So yes, I'm interested in Bijan. And I will say for large field, like if you think the Falcons can get control of this game, Tyler Algier is only 4,900 and is not going to be played by anybody. This would be like a large field dart throw. We've seen games where if they can get control of the ball and they can run a ton, he'll get 12, 13, 14 carries in a game. And with how bad this Dallas defense is, that could get home if he falls in the end zone. So I don't hate that in the largest of fields.
In terms of the Vegas take, I really want to remove myself from this equation because I hopefully you understand the bit whenever I talk about you don't just come into our stadium. Like I looked at it over the last decade, we're under 500 at home. We're not a great team at home. And this year, they're perfect on the road and I think 2-3 at home. So the line's good now at 3.5. I feel like Dallas is one of those teams that could easily just beat us on the road.
They could. They just have so many issues though. I'm going to take the Falcons team total here. I think they can put up points.
Last time we had this exact situation, Falcons were 3-point home favorites. The over-under was at 52. It was the Seahawks.
The Seahawks, right? Yeah.
And I was like, I don't feel good about this at all. So, yeah.
And the Falcons laid an egg.
I think they should win this game. They're a favored team at home against a beat-up Dallas team that has, 2 guys?
Correct.
So, I will be looking forward to this. My main league for my home league has Bijan and CeeDee on it. So that's
going to be fun.
Just go for it. But rise up. Let's just take Falcons money line and just live forever. Next game. Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are 6-point home favorites. The over-under is 49. These two teams played in week 2. Buffalo won 31-10. That's when Tua got knocked out. But the bigger numbers are the fact that the Bills have owned the Dolphins since Josh Allen became the starter. 11-2 since 2018. And here's a crazier stat. At home against the Dolphins with Josh Allen, the Bills are 6-0, averaging 39 points per game against the Dolphins.
Sounds good.
So based on that information right there, Can you explain to me why the Bills are not being played by anyone according to our optimizer?
It's a great question. Buffalo looks great. I think the biggest issue is that it's kind of spread out as far as median projection, meaning like you start to factor in maybe more Amari Cooper snaps after the trade. You give, a share of those targets to Dalton Kincaid. Khalil Shakir's running targets at a pretty high rate. Keon Coleman's playing a little bit more in the slot and kind of being mixed around, that it almost gets to a situation where it's hard to figure out which guy it's going to be. And so then people are just like, well, I'm not going to play any of them and kind of avoid this situation. In tournaments, that becomes interesting to try to take some shots here, especially if you're going to do a portfolio like 150 or 20 max to take some shots. So yeah, I mean, looking right now, like we're not projecting any single Bill to be over 10% in large field on DraftKings. So they've got a high team total. They've crushed the Dolphins in the past. This offense is humming recently. Like it seems like a pretty good spot to take some shots.
Can I read you Josh Allen's DK points against this team at home?
Please.
You just tell me if this gets you excited at all. 41.5, 21.3, 20.3, 29.5, 39.9, and 39.5.
That'll play.
I almost made him my slate breaker. I was very close.
And what is he? He's 7,700. I mean, direct leverage off of Jalen Hurts at that spot as far as pricing. Yeah, he makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then it comes back to everyone feels like they're gonna guess wrong with the dudes. It's like, is it Keon Coleman? Is it Shakir? What's up with Amari Cooper? We haven't seen that much. You just double stack him and you just move on. Or if you're just really scared, like you can play in a small field tournament, Josh Allen, and pick one wide receiver, and then pick a Dolphin the other side and move on. Because you know that there's going to be players like Achane and Tyreek, and I'll bring up Waddle too, that I think are really good plays on the other side. That's where the roster percentage is in this game. So it kind of shocked me to see that the Bill. I mean, you can do whatever. You can play Josh Allen naked for all I care.
Hey now, hey Kyle. You could. I will also say I every week I just play James Cook because nobody wants to play him. He kind of feels like he's in no man's land where it's like, I wish he was a little cheaper, but there's always someone else that you'd rather play that's like $200 more than him, right? And this week it's the same story. 7,200 for James Cook. I love James Cook in this spot against the Dolphins. So I mean, Allen looks great, James Cook looks great, and then pick your favorite stacking partner and hope you run pure on the right guy.
They have been throwing more since Cooper came aboard. Their pass rate's now up to 56%, yards per attempt now up to 9 in the last 2 games. So yeah, I don't mind using James Cook as like a get out of here play and as leverage over Achane and other guys. But Keon Coleman's the guy that I've slowly realized, like, okay, this is what I thought he was as a prospect. This is what I didn't like. Like all the stuff we talk about in the Dynasty podcast about the red flags. He had multiple red flags coming in the NFL. And now he's at the point where he doesn't have to be their one. And yet they used him with end zone targets this past week. They're getting him yak plays in space, and Miami's kind of been a team that's given up big plays on a rate basis. But yeah, so nobody's playing Keon Coleman.
Nobody's playing Keon Coleman. That's a good price, 5,400.
That's what I'm saying.
This is the range that I love for tournaments. 5K to like 6,500. You can get some really big ceiling games from wide receivers here on DK. So I like Coleman. I mean, Amari Cooper also is so interesting just because Miami's allowing the second highest rate of 15+ yard catches. We know Amari Cooper has those big games in him down the field. What if he's incorporated more this week? So yeah, I think my take home here is like we should just play multiple lineups this week. Some with Amari, some with Keon, some with James Cook, and just kind of hope that you run pure on one of those lineups is kind of how I'll be approaching it.
Yeah, and then on the other side, you just bring it back with Achane or Hill. Like it's expensive when you think about Allen and Hill, but the stacking partner with Buffalo certainly is not. So I don't mind that at all. Shakir has also run very hot. A lot of people talk about his catch rate being so high. When you get screens, that's what's going to happen. But I think he's another player where it's like, I think he might be the player that they play the most, Shakir, of those 3 wide receivers. And I'd rather just play Cooper or Coleman. But what are you most interested on the Miami side?
I mean, it's a really good spot, I think, to go right back to Devon Achane. I know he's going to be decently popular, but that's fine, right? Like we talked about that last week. He was your slate breaker. You don't need to play contrarian guys in every spot in your lineup. Achane's a great play. The Bills are allowing the highest running back target share in the league, And right now, this is the best pass catching back in the league, in my opinion, with how he's used and his role and his explosiveness. So I think it's a dream spot for HN, especially if you think the spread is right and they're falling behind on the road. If they're throwing, it's going to be HN in there, and he's going to get 5+ targets from Tua as he's done every time. So I think HN is in an unbelievable spot this week. I love him. And the same thing with Tyreek, right? We played him last week. He was mega chalk. Relative to expectation, he failed. But how long is that going to happen with Tyreek and Tua? So I think both those guys are in play this week, Devon Achane and Tyreek.
His roster percentage will not be nearly what it was last week, too. So I think that's a lot of times in DFS, if you haven't noticed, whoever was chalked last week, people have the feels of like, oh, that didn't work out. I can't go back there. Well, in DFS, we just go, okay, I'm going to go right back there. He has only averaged 49 receiving yards per game against Buffalo in his career. He's never gone above 82. So those things are working against him, but I kind of just throw that out and just say those are different situations. This is a must-win game for Miami on the road. They only have 2 wins. I wanted to bring up Waddle because it's been bad, really, really bad. And I think you and I both took a stand during best ball season on Waddle. And thus far, you can complain and say, oh, well, it was Tua's injury. It's like, dude, we haven't got a blow-up game. He has 1 finish inside the top 36. He's averaging 3.7 receptions. That's not great. But I did a little digging. And what I found out, I got some hot stats for you. Cover 4 shells, which basically like quarters, don't beat us deep, is usually something where you take away the deep play from like a Tyreek or whatever. What if I told you that Jalen Waddle last year led the entire NFL in targets per out run and yards per out run against cover 4? And that's what Buffalo plays a lot. The entire NFL, not just Miami. I think we're getting a spot here where we get Jalen Waddle at next to no roster percentage. Everyone's tired of it. He's a great bring back. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Like, I think Jalen Waddle's something that I'm upping in my player exposure. And maybe it's the contrarian nature in me. Maybe it's just because I believe in the player. But I think this is an eruption spot.
I mean, I like the take. And especially on DraftKings where he is.
Is it hot?
It's hot. It's the sweet spot. 5,500. That's the spot we like for upside. I mean, I think he's a great player over there. On FanDuel, also 6,200. Great tag for Jalen Waddle on that site as well. And not going to be played the way he was last week. Last week, he was like in the cash lineups on FanDuel. This week, I don't think that's going to be the case. So you've talked me into it. I don't think I'm going to play some Waddle this week.
Yeah, I think Miami actually has a shot in this one. I think I would take the over right now. It's at 49. It's been bet up a little bit.
All right. I'm in. Let's take the over.
I'm feeling pretty good about my takes so far. That which totally means I'm going to lose all my money.
Oh, for sure.
All right. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
This episode is brought to you by Etsy.
Oh.
Hear that?
Okay. Thank you.
Etsy knows these aren't the sounds of holiday gifting. Well, not the ones you're hoping for. You want squeals of delight. Happy tears.
How did you?
And spontaneously written songs of joy.
I am so happy. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, the song needs a bit of work, but anyway, to get those reactions, make sure everyone on your list feels heard with handmade, handpicked, and designed gifts from small shops on Etsy. Gifts like personalized jewelry, custom artwork, cozy style items, vintage pieces, and home decor to celebrate all of your favorite people and their specific kind of special. For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
We're back. We're going to talk about a couple more games. First one is the Los Angeles Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams are 1.5-point road favorites. The over-under is now at 48. This is a game that you talked up on Tuesday's podcast, and I had to do a little bit of a deeper dive because I was like, I don't know about this game. I could see it dudding. I feel like Puka's going to be expensive. Kyron's expensive. Cup's expensive. People saw Stafford last week. And then I realized that those four together, Stafford, Kyren, Puka, Kupp. It's fun to say. Stafford, Kyren, Puka, Kupp. Stafford, Kyren, Puka, Kupp. Might be the best offense of all time, EPA per play. Like, they're definitely the best in the NFL over the last couple of years, but like, they've just been elite. And Seattle's been a defense that over the last 3 or 4 weeks have just been getting destroyed. Like, remember they started off the year 3-0, like, this is a really good team, and then we realized they played a bunch of bum teams. It didn't matter. I think the Rams are in a really good spot to hit their team implied total. So I have listened to you, my friend, and I know that I listen every single time you talk, but I'm listening
every time.
Here.
I'm glad you came around. Yeah, it's a bet on two things. One, this Rams offense and this version of it, which we haven't seen for a month, right? Now we get it back. And not just back, but you also get, I think, Puka playing closer to his normal role. Maybe it's not all the snaps that he would have if he was fully healthy, but certainly more than 57%. Kupp did not look fully healthy, in my opinion, last week. Maybe he plays more. Maybe he's more healthy. You get all of that working in unison, plus a great matchup against Seattle, who the defense has been terrible. So, yeah, I think this is a great spot to go to. I'm on their team total. I'm on these guys in tournaments. I think it's a great spot to go to for any of these pieces. The key is trying to figure out which one it's going to be. But again, if you're playing multiple lineups, I think you want some exposure to these high-priced studs in this game.
Yeah, Stafford's not expensive enough, considering what he did last week, which was 4 touchdowns. So if you want to play Stafford, Puka, pick a third piece. That's a good starting place. The problem is on the Seattle side, you're trying to figure out if you're playing Ken Bone Walker or are you messing around with the wide receivers. Do we have any update about DK right now? Because that's a huge part of this game.
So he didn't practice Wednesday, but they've been saying that they're optimistic that he's going to play this week. I feel like you have to see a limited Thursday to feel any confidence in that, which as of our recording, we don't have that information. So make sure you're monitoring that report. I think if DK does not play, I'm not that interested in this offense, period. And you don't have to have a bring back. Like, you can play LA and not have a bring back. Just, I think he's so important to this offense, which, is not that great analysis. It's like, duh.
Player is good for the team.
Player's good for the team. But just, Geno is not the same quarterback without DK. Previously, like, Lockett may have been able to step up and really have a great role. He's clearly on the decline. JSN's role just doesn't change. Like, DK unlocks this offense. So I think for me, it's a Metcalf in. I'm playing some Seahawks and game stacking this. If he's out, I'm just going to play the Rams and probably move on.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. It kind of depends on with Geno. When he has a clean pocket, he's awesome. Really, really awesome. And actually, JSN leads this team in receptions when Geno has a clean pocket, when he's not pressured. So I think Seattle, if we knew that DK was in this, I wouldn't mind taking the Seahawks at home. But I think you just kind of believe in the Rams and know that Puka's going to get played a lot. Kyron's going to get played a lot. Any takes on Kupp, because I feel like I'm at the point now where it's like I see his name and I just see so many other options that I feel like I can bank on at that price point at wide receiver that it's hard for me to click the button.
Yeah, it does feel that way, doesn't it? But it kind of feels like whenever that happens, he's probably a good tournament play. He's more expensive than Puka by $500 on DraftKings. He's like, what is he, $1,000 more than Drake London?
That's what I'm saying. Like, based on those reasons alone, it's hard for me to click.
For sure. And I think a lot of people feel that way. But there were games last year where if you played him as leverage off Puka, you probably did very well. Now, those are situations where Puka was like $8K and Kupp was like $7K, so it was more of a price difference. Now that pricing is flipped where Puka is so cheap, I think I'm just going to play Puka, but I wouldn't fault anybody for taking a shot in tournaments. And I will say, just to kind of add on to like I don't feel as strong about Seattle without Metcalf. If you look at the season-long numbers for the Rams, it's going to show up as green for defensive matchups and all that sort of stuff. They've made a ton of adjustments to their personnel. They benched Tre'Davious White. They put him on the trade block or let him seek a trade or whatever. Over the last 3 weeks, since they've made some changes, they're third on defense in EPA per play. So this is not the Rams that you know from weeks 1, 2, and 3. So I would just caution against thinking that you're playing Seattle against a terrible Rams defense. They've actually been very good.
Yeah, I think that in this game, Walker makes a ton of sense if you just want to play him and correlate with somebody else. I think he's going to be the Seahawk that's rostered most. If Metcalf is out, do you see JSN or Lockett getting a boost. Like I still don't see guys in cash like them being people that people want because JSN's not exactly cheap.
That's the thing is like it feels like they've just been stuck on his price. Like he feels like he's been 5,900 to 6,300 every single week. And without Metcalf, like you think that you would see this huge projection in targets and it would get a lot better. But 6,200, like he's $100 more than Chris Olave against the Panthers, right? So it's tough to see it for me on JSN. He feels like a player who should be 5,500 or something. And then Lockett, same thing. 5,600 is fine, but it's been a long time since we've seen a ceiling from Tyler Lockett, and there's a lot of really good high ceiling plays right around him. So I think this is going to be a week where I will be underweight on Seattle.
All right, give me your Vegas take.
Taking the Rams, dude. I took their team total. I think this spread should be more than a field goal. So give me the Rams minus the 1.5.
Yeah, I'll take the Rams as well. We quickly wanted to talk about two other games before we get into the rest of the stuff because Detroit and Green Bay has been right there, and Jordan Love is practicing right now. So it's trending in that's correct, right? He's practicing?
Correct.
Okay. So that one is a game total that's very close. It's right there at 48.5. So my favorite take in that game is to take Love to Packers and bring it back with Gibbs. But it's a great spot. Like I feel like this is a game environment that we do need to pay attention to.
For sure. And on top of that, with Love, if he's healthy, you get a matchup against the Lions that you have to throw on. The tricky thing is there's like 8 different Packers you can pick every week, right? And it always feels like you're going to get it wrong. But they have given up huge games to lead wide receivers. This is credit to Rich Rewar. Lord Reeves, week 1, Cooper Kupp, 14 for 110-1. Chris Godwin, 7 for 117-1. Marv, 564-1. Metcalf, 7 for 104. CeeDee Lamb, 7 for 89. Justin Jefferson, 7 for 81. Calvin Ridley, 10 catches, 143 yards. So if we get Jordan Love, I think somebody is getting home from Green Bay. I don't know who it's going to be. I think Romeo Doubs is interesting. I think Jaden Reed is very interesting. Those are my 2 takes.
Yes, nobody's being played in this game, by the way. Like I'm not seeing roster percentage on anybody in that game. So while everybody's attention is on Atlanta, Dallas, and Buffalo, Miami, it's a weird slate because I think you can go in so many different directions. And so I would say a lot of the roster percentage is kind of diffused where, there's not really like a consensus of like, this is the only game that's going to be played. I'm seeing a lot of roster percentages like in the teens, but nothing that's like spitting out like 20, 25% for all these other games. So I like that one a lot. And then I also don't mind stacking up the Eagles. If you wanted to do an Eagles onslaught stack and just go with that, AJ Brown is set up to destroy against the Jaguars defense that's plays man more than any other coverage and more than any other team in the NFL. So I think AJ Brown's an elite play. I don't love paying up for both of those guys because I don't know if they're going to be pushed. Like that's last week, the Eagles were not pushed, and you did see Hurts get there, but Brown didn't. And so the piece you actually needed last week was, if you stacked him up with Smith. So, or if you want to play Saquon in the Philly defense, I'm fine with that too.
I think both guys are just unbelievable plays. The Jaguars can't stop anybody. So again, somebody is getting home for Philly, and it's hard to make that work pricing wise if you stack up Hurts with AJ Brown. So you could just play AJ Brown and not worry about Jalen Hurts, or you could just play Saquon, who at 8,200 relative to Kyron is not going to get played. Relative to Alvin Kamara is not getting played. And we just saw Josh Jacobs have his best game of the year last week against this Jaguars defense. Again, 7.5 point home favorites against the Jaguars. This screams Saquon Barkley to me. So I plan to definitely play a lot of Saquon this week.
All right, moving on.
Slate Breaker of the Week.
As Kate Otten, I thought that it would be nothing better than to get a really good sponsor that's near and dear to my heart. And so the sponsor of this week's segment is Tumwater, Washington, my birthplace. That means a lot to me. And I know because it is the home to the Davis Meeker Gary oak tree, a 400-year-old historic oak tree that I didn't just read about on Wikipedia.
Somebody listening to this is probably from there, and they're like,
"Old
Kyle,
Tumwater,
you idiot." Yeah. I thought you were going to make the Slate Breaker sponsor whatever athletic tape you use.
Ooh, I did use some adhesive tape, just a really cheap one. It's Kroger brand, dude. So yeah,
I don't think Cade uses that.
You think Cade uses like high grade taped up stuff for his fingies?
Oh, he uses the good stuff. Yeah.
I had to explain that to my wife. Like, okay, this guy, his fingers are taped up. She goes, "Why does he do that?" I go, "Cause he grinds. This guy just his hand is literally always in the dirt."
Actually, check his fingernails.
All right, so my slate breaker of the week is none other than Malik Neighbors, who I got to see what he dressed up for Halloween, did a little deeper dive, but that's not really what it's about. It's about his price and where he's at in terms of, we talked about earlier that he's a guy in the cash range, but I feel like it's a player that won't be played a ton. The last 2 weeks, outside the top 36 wide receivers, you're starting to get that feel of like, oh man, things are regressing a little bit. The last time he played Washington, he saw 67% of the team's targets. He went 10 for 127 and 1. The dude is going to get peppered. Washington plays the 6th highest rate of man, and Neighbors against man coverage this year. Get this. He has 50% of the team's first read targets, number one in the NFL, 44% targets per route run against man, and the 3rd most expected points per route run versus man. So I think Malik Neighbors can have one of those games that he goes off at a roster percentage that's going to be in the teens, but nothing out of control. And that's what I love. It's like, we're not just going for players that like nobody's playing. Those are great dart throws to shoot the moon for. This is a guy that has a good projection, and yet his roster percentage doesn't match that.
I love that. You just pulled out the Collinsworth there at the end.
What'd I say?
Here's a guy. You said this is a guy, but I just heard Collinsworth. Here's a guy. I love it, man. Yeah, he's great. He's a great play. I'm going to go with the tight end, which I don't think I've gone with the tight end this year, but I'm going to flip the build.
You went with the man.
I'm with man. Flip the build in the same game. Everybody wants to play Mike Gesicki in cash, which I probably will too. What if we spend up for Brock Bowers in the exact same game? He's 6K, and I want you to think about him as a wide receiver or a pass catcher, not just tight end, because it does feel uneasy to be like, I'm spending all this on my tight end. Over the last 4 games, his target counts 12, 10, 14, down game last week, 5.
Oh, come on.
Kind of feels like we might get a good bounce back spot. Since he has faced the 4th highest target share to inline pass catchers this year, they've allowed the 7th most catches in yards to tight ends and the 10th most schedule adjusted points to tight ends. And I love when, I look at the matchups and look at things and I have a take, and then I go to Marv's expected fantasy points model, which is in the DFS pass, and he highlighted Bowers as a regression candidate in a good way. So I'm going to follow the math. I'm going to follow the matchup. I'm going to play Brock Bowers. Hope for the best.
I'm going to play these two together in a lineup just because you told me to.
Stack them with Gardner, and I'm cooking, baby.
It is nice. I don't mind it at all. Like, especially in that game, like you mentioned, Gesicki, there's a lot to like in that game. So, one more segment.
It's time for Borg versus Betz, presented by DraftKings.
The boys are coming off their first losing week of the season. The morale could not be lower right now.
We got.
We did get got last week. We were 1-3. Wasn't great. Wasn't a great week, but I'm going to rally us here because I feel really, really strongly about some of these takes. We'll give out some of these in our Discord channel by the time that you've already listened to this. But the first one I will take in DraftKings Pick 6 is Joe Burrow less than 262.5 passing yards. That's where I got it. He's been under this in 6 of 8 games and in 4 of the last 5 games. Cincinnati's pass rate, which has been a thing that we've kind of chased all year long, started off super hot, 66%. It was 4th in the NFL. Since then, 59%, and they're 30th in plays per game. They're 7-point favorites, especially if T. Higgins misses again. I feel like this is a game that could be Chase Brown, Zach Moss, could be just a dirty, gross game. So I will take Joe Burrow less than 262.5 passing yards.
I like it. Again, you're going to be shocked by this take, but T. Higgins batters. I'm going to take Justin Herbert. I'm going to go more than 225.5 passing yards because I don't think the market is accounting for the change in philosophy that we've seen from the Chargers since their bye week. He's been over this in 3 straight games, and he's averaged 35 pass attempts per game since the bye. Before the bye week, that was 23 attempts per game. So we've seen a big-time shift from Roman and Harbaugh coming out of the bye week. Now you get a matchup with Cleveland, who I feel like we still think about them as this defense of last year. Since week 5, they are 23rd in EPA per pass attempt, and they're allowing the 5th highest yards per attempt in that sample. So give me more on Justin Herbert's pass yards.
I'm going to take another quarterback here. It's Kirk O'Chains, my boy Kirk Cousins, who is just ATL through and through. But I'm going to take the less. I'm going to take less than 23.5 completions. We talked about that game earlier, talked about the game environment. There is a chance for Atlanta just to salt away the clock on the ground. You talked about Tyler Algier earlier as like, hey, maybe there's an opportunity where they just run the ball against a run funnel defense. But 23.5 completions, throw out that wild Thursday night game that I was at against the Buccaneers, which was awesome. But if you throw that one out, he's been less this in 6 of his 7 other games. Okay. And then ATL wins this year, 20, 21, 19, and 23. So other than that one huge game, which is going to skew every average you look at, he's been under this in Atlanta wins this year. So less than 23.5 completions.
Okay. Well, that's sad. I'm going to take Olave. I'm going 2 more here, Kyle. I'm feeling spicy today. I'm going to take Olave over 64.5 receiving yards. We already talked about him a little bit, but just listen to the stat lines that we have here over the last 5 games against the Panthers. The wide receiver 1, Courtland Sutton, 11 targets, 8 catches, 100 yards. Terry McLaurin, 6 targets, 6 catches, 98 yards. Drake London, 10 targets, 674 and 1. DJ Moore, 5 catches, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase, 85 yards and a touchdown. I think this is a great play as is, but I will be laddering this on DraftKings, on sportsbooks. You can basically spread out your exposure, different unit size to each bet, with the lower amount of a bet, as the line gets higher. So I'll take a little and I'll put it on 70 plus. I'll take a little and I'll put it on 80 plus. I think 90 plus is interesting. And for him to have a 100-yard game, which I think is very likely, he has a plus 330 odds to do so. So I'll be laddering Chris Olave this week, but the official play is going to be over or more than 64.5 yards.
A ladder. I like that call. You're wanting someone to have, you want
Panthers,
someone
man.
to pay for college.
I would love that. I need it.
Yeah. Chris Olave is a great play this week. That was Borg versus Betz presented by DraftKings Pick 6. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code BALLERS.
Ballers.
That's code BALLERS for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Bets. That's going to do it for us this weekend. Tell everyone goodbye.
Yeah, best of luck to everybody out there this weekend. It should be an awesome weekend of games. Happy Halloween to all of you. Enjoy all the football. Sunday night, Monday night, and we'll catch you guys next week for Tuesday. Best of luck this weekend. Bring home some cash.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.